Hi, Shana Tova, welcome. I want to start off by introducing myself. My name is Rabbi Ben Resnick. I've been the rabbi at a synagogue in Massachusetts and most recently at a day school in Chicago where I live with my family. And I want to say on behalf of my Jewish learning and really on behalf of me, thank you so much for choosing to spend part of this very strange Rosh Hashanah with us. It is not the Rosh Hashanah I don't think that any of us hoped we would have, or maybe any of us expected to have, but it is the one that we do have. And my guess is that in 5, 10, 15 years down the line, it's going to be one that we remember. And I just want to say again, on behalf of my Jewish learning, and for me personally, it is just such a privilege that you've chosen to spend some of it with us and with me. I want to, before we get started, we're going to start it very, very soon as people continue to trickle on. I just want to explain a little bit about what's going to go on and what we're going to experience here today together. First, I just want to say, please do be merciful with yourself and with us if there are any tech hiccups. We all pray for good and swift internet. But we know that not all of our prayers are always answered exactly as we hope. So if I cut out, I will be back. If you cut out, don't freak out. It's going to be okay. Just try to rejoin us as soon as you can. If you do have any tech issues, you can email community@myjewishlearning.com, community@myjewishlearning.com, and we will try our best to respond. The last thing, which is a tech thing, which is also sort of related to the Minyan thing, is because we expect a lot of people, we now have 338, 339, and climbing. Try to keep you abreast of how many people are there, or you can look down and sort of feel like, wow, there's a community here. Part of making that happen is making sure that some people appear on the screen. So because of our tech limitations, we can't have everybody on the screen at all times, but we are going to periodically promote people to be what are called panelists. When you're a panelist, that means your face is on the screen. And let me just share, it's a really important thing. In order to constitute our minyan here, there's something very important about seeing our faces. There's something very important about hearing our voices. So when we get to things like Baruch Hu and Kaddish, things that require a minyan, what we're going to ask everyone to do and invite everyone to do is unmute yourselves briefly so you can respond to those things. And if you are one of those people who is a panelist, know that you have this really sacred responsibility right now of making our minyan. And the last thing I want to say, and then we'll continue with that nigun for a few more seconds, and then move on into the greatest hits, is that we are not going to get to everything today. I hope we hit most of your favorites. I apologize if the tune you are hoping to hear is not the tune that I choose. Most of them are pretty traditional tunes. And on that note, as you probably already heard as I was singing the Nigun, Rabbi Ben Resnick has an okay voice, but he is not a trained cantor. Unless you are my parents, who I believe are here, if you came for the Rabbi Ben Resnick show, you are going to be disappointed. My voice is going to sound much, much, much better if it is combined with your voices. Communal prayer is a huge value in Jewish tradition. It's something that is very challenging this year, but I am counting on all of you to make me sound and pray better by my knowing that your mouths are moving and that your rooms are filled not only with my voice, but also with your own. On that note, we'll continue with the Nigun, and I will be calling pages from Machzor Lev Shalem, which if you have, it'll be easy to find the pages. I will also try to remember to say what piece of the liturgy we're learning about and davening through, so that if you're using a different Machzor, you can find it that way. I, 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 O ma tov, O halecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. I'm going to continue with Ashrei on page 60. Psukei de Zimra, the beginning, opening psalms are about preparing ourselves to enter a prayerful space. I encourage you to follow along with me in the text if you wish, or simply close your text, virtual or real, and close your eyes and center yourself. Or if you need to build your prayer space in any way that you can, put on your talis, get a glass of water, come settle in here, and get ready to be fully present here for this short hour that we have together. Ashrei again is page 60 in Lev Shalem. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Di'alelu Chazela Ashrei Am Shekachalo Ashrei Am Shadonai Eloav Dila LeDavid Aromimcha Elohai Amelech V'Baruch Hashem Lecha Le'olam Va'ed B'chol Yamav Baruch HaKadosh Gadol Adonai Mulam Tehilat Adonai Yedaber Bi V'Barecho Basar Shem Kodsho Le'olam Va'ed Va'anachnu Nevorech Yom Me'ata B'Yad Olam Hallelujah. Psalm 150 is on page 63 of Lev Shalem. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, Bekocho, hallelujah, Birkiauzo, hallelujah, Gvurota, hallelujah, Rov Gula, hallelujah, Teka Shofar, hallelujah, Benevel Mechinor, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah, B'teka shofar, hallelujah, B'nevel v'chinor, hallelujah, B'tofu machol, hallelujah, B'minim v'ogav, hallelujah, B'zilzalei shama, hallelujah, B'zilzalei shua, hallelujah, hallelujah. Hallelujah. Kol haneshama hallelujah. Hallelujah. Kol haneshama hallelujah. Hallelujah. Oh, hi, 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 we'll continue with Hamelech, which is on page 69. Hamelech is usually, which means the king or the sovereign, is usually the liturgical poem, the piyut, that sort of transitions us from the private contemplative space of Psukei de Zimra to a more public space. Traditionally, more people are coming into the shul by then because Jews come to shul late, and the place is starting to fill up. We're all in the same space, which is a challenge for experiencing Hamelech. And I wanted to share one quick kavanah about kingship, and particularly kingship when you only see one other person. It's a bit of a macabre teaching, but it's one that's quite beautiful. There's a halacha that Moshe tells the people in Dvarim, in the last book of the Torah, about how if you execute somebody, if someone's condemned to die, and you execute them by hanging, you don't leave them hanging from the tree. You don't leave them hanging from the tree. Rather, you take them down immediately and bury them. And he says, Rashi there, in a commentary of that verse, he said the reason why you do this is because it's like, imagine that the king had a twin brother. The king had a twin brother. And his twin brother was a bit of a no-goodnik, more than a bit of a no-goodnik, and was executed. People walking by are going to say, look, they just executed the king. So the king, in this parable, of course, is Hashem, and the brother is us. And the idea there, I think, the beautiful thing about this teaching, when we think about kingship, and when we think about divinity, and we think about people around us, we are meant to see so much divinity reflected in the face of the people right next to us. If you're sharing the room with someone, have a look at that person. We are supposed to see so much divinity in the face of all the people around us that we literally mistake them for the face of God. Even the worst of us. Even the lowest among us, that criminal who's hanging from a tree, people are going to walk by and confused and think, oh my goodness, they're treating God that way. As we think about kingship, as we think about Hamelech, as we think about moving through Rosh Hashanah this year, I pray that we bring some of that awareness both to this space and to whatever spaces we find ourselves in. Hamelech is on page 69. Yoshev al kisei ram v'nisa shochen ad marom v'kadosh shemo v'chatuv ranenu tzadikim b'Adonai laisharim nava tehila b'fi sharim titramam U'b'divrei tzadikim titbarach U'b'ilshon chasidim titkadash Uvkerev Kedoshim Titalam. We'll continue with Chatzi Kaddish on page 70, followed by Baruch Hu. I will invite everyone to unmute themselves right now, and of course respond to Yehi Shmei Rabbah and Baruch Hu, and just hear the cacophony of 381 people hopefully responding. It's Gadol, it's Gadol, Shemei Rabbah, Ve'alem Adivra Girutei, V'yamlichu Malchutei,
Get over here now, Max. You're not getting white beard today, and I am serious.
Rabbi, you need to unmute yourself.
Let's unmute everyone else for Baruch Hu too, and then I invite you all to unmute yourself for Baruch Hu, and then we'll mute back up. Baruch Hu Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Olam Voed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Vahed. And I know that cacophony, there is no good way to sing together on Zoom yet. But I hope that, like you, I hope that you also find something that is deeply comforting that we are, in fact, together. And I'll invite everyone else to meet themselves back up now, and we'll continue with our liturgy. Have an opportunity to unmute in just a moment. Or olam be'otzar chaim, or od me'ofel, amar vayeh. We will continue with Kriyat Shema, the Shema, which is on page 77 of the Lev Shalem, gathering the corners of our talitot together. If you are the kind of person who is wearing a talis, the symbol being, true oneness is about gathering things. It's not about one single thing. It's about gathering the many together, about seeing the beautiful unity in the astounding diversity all around us. Once again, the Shema is page 77. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu hadivarim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha Hayom al levavecha, v'shinantam levanecha, v'dibarta bam, b'shivtecha b'veitecha, u'v'lechtecha v'derech, u'b'shochbecha u'v'kumecha, u'kshartam leot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot beinenecha, u'ktavtam al mezuzot beitecha, ובי שעריך, והיה אם שמוע תשמעו המצווה אשר אנוכי מצווך. Adonai Elohechem emet. We'll continue with Micha Mocha, which is on page 80 in your Lev Shalem, if that is the Sidur that you are using. After that, we will have 2 or 3 minutes of time for silent prayer. The formal text for the Amidah on Rosh Hashanah is on page 11 through 17. Of course, as always, the Amidah is a private audience with divinity. So if the formal text is what does it for you, please feel free to daven the formal text, or of course, as always, feel free to daven the words of your heart. Once again, page 80, followed by page 11 through 17, if you are in the Lev Shalem. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, norati lo tosef ele. Shira chadasha shibchu geulim leshimcha sfat hayam, יחד כולם עודבים לכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ובדי חינומך יהודה וישראל. Go aleinu Adonai Tzvaot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael Baruch Atah Adonai Gal Yisrael. If you're still davening your private Amidah, please, of course, continue at your own pace. When you're ready, please join me on page 85 for one of the famous Piyutim, one of the liturgical poems that often appears in the Rosh Hashanah morning Amidah repetition. It's Le'el Orech Din. If that's not your favorite one, I do mean sincerely, I'm sorry. A big part of comfort this year for me is hearing tunes that I know and that I like, and I have the privilege of being the rabbi and getting to choose all of those. So I hope this is one that you know and you like. It's on page 85. One other just public service announcement. If you are one of the panelists and you feel comfortable, please do enable your video, because it's an important part of seeing other faces. I think is an important part of constituting some kind of minyan in this space. Page 85. Levochein levavod beyom din legolei amukot badin ledover mesharim beyom din lehogei deod badin. Who searches hearts beyom din, who reveals the depths badin, who speaks uprightly beyom din, who contemplates depths badin. We will continue on page 96 with the Torah service. We, of course, don't have an ark or a Sefer Torah. At least I don't have one in my home. If some of you have arks and Sefer Torah in your home, now would be a lovely time to get them out and spend some time with them. If not, let's focus on opening up the ark within. We're on page 96 in Lev Shalem, page 96. Ein kamocha ba'Elohim Adonai, v'ein k'maasecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, Adonai oz lemo yitein, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, avarachamim eitiv avirtzonecho et Zion. Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim, ki b'cha levad batachnu, melech eram v'nisadon olamim. Vayehi binso Aharon, vayomer Moshe. I'll invite you to rise if you'd like. Kuma Adonai v'yafutzu oivecha, v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha, ki mitzion teitzei Torah, ki mitzion teitzei Torah, udevar Adonai miRushalayim baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, B'Kedushato. You may be seated. I have to say, as a rabbi, I just get a huge kick out of the fact, always, that I can make people sit up and stand down, and now I can do it from across the world. It's really thrilling for me. You may be seated. What's going to happen next is, of course, we don't have a Torah reading or aliyot because we don't have a Sefer Torah. In your Lev Shalem Machzor, and in most Machzorim, you can find the Torah reading for Rosh Hashanah Day 1. I am going to chant a little bit of that for you so we can hear some of the very distinctive high holiday trope, the nusach, that is so much so that for me is really associated with the Yamim Noraim. Tunes really do have this power, I think, to bring us into moments that are hard to enter sometimes. And I think the holidays this year have been very hard to enter, at least for me. And the tunes really get me there, which is a big part of what we're trying to do here in this service and what I'm hopefully sharing with you. The reading for the first day of Rosh Hashanah is about the birth of Isaac, Yitzchak. You might think that on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we would read about the creation of the world, because Rosh Hashanah is supposed to be about the creation of the world, but we don't. We read about the creation of a family. And I think that is a move that the rabbis make that is very intentional and very profound and very deep. Rosh Hashanah is fundamentally about the formation of a family, our children, who are revelations in our lives, and also the Jewish family, of which we are all a part. That's what we read about now. I encourage you to either follow along in the text, if you like, in the Hebrew or the English. I will chant some in both of those languages. Or also, if you'd like to just close your eyes and hear the words and listen for a few key words like pakad, which is to take note of, or Yitzchak, tzchok, Isaac's name, which also means laughter, which we could all use a lot more of lately. Page 100. Vadonai pakad et Sarah kasher amar vayas Adonai l'Sarah kasher diber vatahar vatelet Sarah l'Abraham ben lizkunav lamoed asher diber oto Elohim vayikra Abraham et shem beno hanolad lo asher yalada bo Sarah Yitzchak vayamol Abraham et Yitzchak beno ben shmonad yamim kasher tziva oto Elohim. Adonai took note of Sarah as promised, and Adonai did for Sarah what had been announced. Sarah conceived and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the set time of which God had spoken. Abraham gave his newborn son, whom Sarah had borne him, the name of Yitzchak. And when his son Yitzchak was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded him. Ve'Avraham ben me'at shana behivaled lo et Yitzchak beno vatomer Sarah tzchok asali Elohim kol hashomea Yitzchak li vatomer mimilel le'Avraham eni kabanim le'Sarah ki yalati Yossi ben Lizkunav, Vayigdal Hayeled, Vayigamal, Vayas Abraham Ishter Gadol, Beyom Yigamer et Yitzchak. We will continue in just a moment with prayers for healing, which we could all use a lot of in so many different ways this year. Prayers for sickness, of course, those in our lives and those in the world, people who have been affected by COVID and people who have not been affected by COVID, but who have been affected by other illnesses and afflictions. One could go on for hours about how many different things there are that need healing in our world. We only have one short one, so I will let hopefully our singing and our own private meditations do the talking. We'll introduce the healing service with a song from Debbie Friedman, which I'm guessing many of you know. It's on page 115 in your Machzor in the middle. Mi sheberach avoteinu mekor habracha limoteinu, may the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach imoteinu mekor haberacha lavoteinu, bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. First, I'm going to include the standard Hebrew Mishaberach formula and blessing. Many of you sent names for me to include, which I'm going to read out now. I'll also pause, so if you didn't send the name, if you didn't see that link, you can include it yourselves and sort of offer it to this, offer that prayer here in this public space, in this communal space. If you would like to send it, if you plan to be here with us for Yom Kippur as well, and you would like to send it along, please do that in the intervening days. Mi sheberach avotenu Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, hu yivarech et Joey Friss, David Nolandlov, Sebastian Santiago, Maurice Mizrahi, Ruth Stambler, Leon Stambler, Khalid Davis, Wayne Von Arens, Barbara Schwimmer, Miss Sammy Stern, Binyamin Bar Elka, Cynthia, Jason, Sarah, Navid, and Trudy, Glenn Turner, Shalom Chaim ben Naomi Sarah, Dina Shanit bat Zahava Golda, Bela Naftali Tzvi ben Zahava Golda, Bela Yechezkel ben Zahava Golda, Bela Yechezkel ben Zahava Golda, Bela Yechezkel Meir ben Gittel Fega, Ricky, Idie Klein Garvis, Joseph Penfold, Leanne O'Connor, Robert Ballinger, Charles Hauer, Kim Kriebel, Lynn Alexander, Michael Bush, Donald Jones, Sheila Tolliver, Ronald Goldman, Toby Rosenthal, Gail Rubin, Sandy, Lionel Mingo, Bernice Zarate, David Michael Owen, David Michael I apologize, I'm not sure where the space here goes, but David, Michael, Owen, Ian, James, and James Matthews, Esther bat Devorah, Veshimshon, Devorah bat Rivka, bat Avraham HaKohen, Rachel bat Leah, Sharon Pierce, Yishai ben Yudit, John ben Shira, Shira bat Ruth, Heather bat Shira, Gabriel, Myrna Schimmel, Mindel, Ed Kaftal, and Rachel bat Sarah. Ve'et kol hacholim, vayasir mehem kol machala, vayishlach bimhera refuah shlema min hashamayim, refuat hanefesh, refuat haguf, vayishlach bracha v'atzlacha b'chol ma'aseh yedehem, im kol Yisrael v'nomar, amen. And I'd like to also include a prayer for doctors and nurses and all those people who have been working to keep us safe and healthy throughout the pandemic. Mishaberach avotenu Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov, imotenu Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, hu yivarech et kol mi she'oskim b'refuat hacholim. May God bless everyone who works to heal the sick. V'chol mi shemivarkim otam, and everyone who visits them. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishalem scharam v'yitein lahem chochma havana koach v'lev shomea la'asok ba'avodatam be'emunah. And may God give them a wise and discerning heart to reward their efforts and to do their work with wisdom. Vayishlach bracha v'atzlacha v'chol ma'aseh yedehem im kol Yisrael v'nomar, amen. On page 117 is a prayer for our country, and our country needs it. Our God and God of our ancestors, we ask your blessings for our country, for its government, for its leaders and advisors, and for all who exercise just and rightful authority. Teach them insights from your Torah, that they may administer all affairs of state fairly, that peace and security, happiness and prosperity, justice and freedom may forever abide in our midst. Creator of all flesh, bless all the inhabitants of our country with your spirit. May citizens of all races and creeds forge a common bond in true harmony, to banish hatred and bigotry, to safeguard the ideals and free institutions that are the pride and glory of our country. May this land under your providence be an influence for good throughout the world, uniting all people in peace and freedom, helping them to fulfill the vision of your prophet. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they experience war anymore. And let us say, Amen, 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 Amen. It is an oldie, but it is a goodie. I grew up hearing that prayer read, maybe often without too much kavanah, many, many, many weeks. And as I read it now, it was pretty hard not to read it with pretty intense kavanah. There are so many ways in which our country is rent and broken by racism and by disease. And I don't think I need to add much more than what Sidur Shim Shalom added in the mid-1980s. May the words of that prayer speedily come to pass. Now would normally be the time for sounding of the shofar, but it is Shabbat, so we don't traditionally sound the shofar. I hope you guys get a chance to hear the shofar somewhere tomorrow, and then if you come back and join us here on Yom Kippur, I'll blow a long blast, as long as I can, at the end of Ne'ilah. I do want to share one quick teaching about shofar. This is about Hilchot shofar, about the laws of shofar and how they're made. A shofar can be made from the horn of any non-kosher animal, from the horn of any kosher animal, except for a cow, because a cow is supposed to remind us of the golden calf. But you can take any other horn you want and make it into a shofar. Now, you can't just cut it off the animal and make it into a horn. You have to boil it and shape it and massage it into a nicely shaped horn. But there's one thing that you cannot do. Shulchan Aruch, the most important code of Jewish law, says you may not make the narrow end of the shofar wide, and you cannot make the wide end narrow. In other words, the shofar has to be blown roughly in the same shape, roughly in the same orientation that it grew out of the animal. Right? We are blowing this sound through the natural world. We're not supposed to alter it. And there's a beautiful Hasidic teaching about that, which is about, well, the shape of a shofar is supposed to mirror and supposed to convey the shape of a human life. We start off as very young children with this very narrow constraint. I see a child on my screen right now, James Rosenblum. That might be your dad, James, right? We start off with a little perspective and a little world, and God willing, as we grow older and older and older, our world gets bigger and bigger and wider, and the sound of the shofar expands and grows with us, and brings a fullness and a healing and an expansiveness to a world that does feel very constricted at the moment. So we won't sound the shofar, but we will think about that kavanah, and we will continue on page 123 with putting the Torah away, right? We are talking about not a physical Torah, probably. We never put the Torah away in our hearts, but we're going to conclude this part of the service with Eitz Chaim, and then we'll move into the final part of our service, which is Musaf. Page 123 in the Lev Shalem. Eitz Chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha meushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha Shalom Hashivenu Adonai Elecha Benashuva Chadesh Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Ordinarily, before Musaf, this is where the rabbi would be settling in for a good 45-minute sermon. I am not going to do that now, but I am going to share a 1-minute sermon. Time me. There's a Hasidic teacher named Moshe Chaim Ephraim, who's the grandson of the Baal Shem Tov. And he was writing about Pharaoh's dreams. And in Pharaoh's dreams, the thing that bothers Pharaoh is that the bad cows ate the good cows. And they thought it'd do him good, but it didn't make him better, like they thought a monster supper should. That's not exactly the Torah's words, but that's Joseph Nemedian Technicolor Dream Code, right? The disturbing thing about the dream is that the bad cows eat the good cows, but they don't get any better. And Moshe Chaim Ephraim says that this means that this is a psychological thing, right? Sometimes we get pulled into the side of Ra, the side of darkness, the side of evil, and the side of despair. And the world around us closes in and gets darker and smaller and grimmer. And sometimes we get pulled so far to that side that we can't even remember the possibility that the world could be better. We can't even remember what it was like to walk down the street and not be worried about going around people and just walking in wherever. We can't even remember what that is like. And he's telling this to Joseph, and Joseph says, what do you need to do? You need to find an ish navon v'chacham. You need to find a smart and wise and discerning man. And what does it mean to be a wise and discerning person, says Moshe Chaim Ephraim? It means a wise and discerning person can, even through those 7 years of bad times, or even through those 7 months of bad times, has the power, the wisdom to reawaken a memory of the light, a memory of the world when it was good, a memory of what can be possible. It's only by reawakening the memory of what can be possible that we can begin the hard and sacred work of making it actual. I pray that this holiday season is impetus to begin that process of recollection and that process of doing that work for all of us on this call and all of us throughout the world. We'll continue with Musaf. If you would like to spend 2 minutes in private prayer, the Musaf Amidah in the Lev Shalem begins on page 125. About a minute through, I'll start a nigun, and then we will do a bit of a repetition and some of the highlights of Musaf, after which we'll make Kiddush and hopefully have lunch and hopefully have a sweet rest of the day. So the silent Amidah, if you'd like to follow along the formal text, is page 125. We'll continue with the repetition on page 141. To those of you who are hoping to hear a brilliant cantorial Hineni, I'm going to apologize again. I'm not going to do that for two reasons. The first is which my brilliant cantorial Hineni would probably not inspire you too much. The second is Hineni, this piyut, which has become one of the most complicated sort of highlights of the Musaf service, is really about the prayer leader taking a moment for quiet reflection and praying that he or she is up to the awesome task of leading the community in the Yomim Tovim, which is a scary task. And I said at the beginning of this year, and I really meant it, I really do take the task in a year, but particularly this year, of helping people have a bit of Rosh Hashanah in their lives very, very seriously. And I will take 5 seconds now before the repetition to pray quietly that I am up to the task. We're on page 141. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor Ve'Anora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ve'Konei Agol V'zocher Chasdei Avot U'Mevi Gorel Ibnei Bneihem Leman Shemo B'Yahava Misor Achamim U'Dvonim U'Milemed Ad Mevinim Evdech Apim Tzvilav Dachanunim Lechalod Ulchanim B'nei Melech Malchei Amlachim Ve'Adonei Adonim Zochreinu Lechaim Melech Hafetz B'Chaim וכותבנו בספר החיים למענך אלוהים החיים מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. We'll continue on page 143 with Unatana Tokef, probably the most famous liturgical piece of the Rosh Hashanah service. I think I'm not going to introduce it too much because I think the words this year will speak entirely for themselves. I'd encourage you, I'm going to do most of it in Hebrew, some of it in English. I encourage you to peek back and forth and engage with it in whatever language is most comfortable for you. Page 143. Unatan tokev kedushat hayah ki unora be'ayom uvadinase malchutecha vichon v'chesed gizecha v'teshev alav v'emet emet ki atahu dayan umochiach v'yodea va'ed v'chotem v'sofer umoneh ותזכור כל הנשכחות ותפתח את ספר זיכרונות ומעליו יקורא וחותם יד כל אדם בו ובשופר גדול יתקע וכל דממה דקה יישמע ומלאכים יחפשון וכאילו רדה יוחזון ויאמרו הנה יום הדין לבכות על צבא מרום בדין כי לא יזכו ביניך בדין וכל באי עולם יעברו לפניך כבני מרון וכל באי עולם יעברו לפניך כבני מרון כבקרה רועדרה מעביר צונו תחת שבטם כן תעביר ותבכה ותסבור ותמנה ותבכה נפש כל חי ותחתוך קצבה לכל בריאה ותחתוך קצבה לכל בריאה ותכתוב אין גזר דינם בראש השנה katevon ubiyom tzom kippur yechatemon berosh Hashanah ikatevon ubiyom tzom kippur yechatemon kama yavrun v'chama yibareun mi yichyeh u'mi yamut mi bekitzo u'mi lo bekitzo mi ba'esh u'mi b'mayim berosh Hashanah yigatevon ubiyom tzom kippur yechatemon berosh Hashanah yigatevon ubiyom tzom kippur yechatemon. Who will live and who will die? Who will live a long life and who will come to an untimely end? Who will perish by fire and who by water? Who by sword and who by beast? Who by hunger and who by thirst? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Berosh Hashanah yikatevon ubiyom tzom kippur yechatemon berosh Hashanah yigatevon yom tzom kippur yechatemon u'tshuva u'tfilah u'tzedakah mavirin et roah hagezerah. But tshuva and tfilah and tzedakah have the power to transform the harshness of our destiny. It's 11 now. The service was going to end at 11, but it'll end very close to 11 at about 11:10 in just a few more minutes. The next part of a traditional Rosh Hashanah service are these three sections, these three special sections of Musaf, Malchuyot, Zichronot, and Shofrot, these themes that are prominent throughout the holidays of God's sovereignty, Malchuyot, Zichronot, remembrance, and Shofrot, blowing the shofar. Usually there are shofar blasts during them, but today, because it's Shabbat, we're going to forego those shofar blasts. The first part, the introduction of Malchuyot, is one of my absolutely favorite parts of the entire service. It is called Aleinu Hagadol, and it is where Aleinu originally comes from. The prayer that we end almost every single Jewish service with is Aleinu, and it involves bowing. Traditionally, once a year on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, there's a tradition of bowing, prostrating fully onto the ground. So I'd like to encourage you, if you have space to do that, to try that. And we're going to go on a little bit of a field trip here, because I'm going to turn my computer around, and you'll see that instead of having just a background, I have a messy house full of lots of toys. And I will invite you. I'm going to bow fully on the ground because I don't have room where I'm standing now, and I don't want to forego. It's my favorite part of the service, and I'll invite you to find some space to do that with me. Got to move the trampoline, though. Okay, and the trucks. Okay. Page 154. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol l'teitz gedulah le'yotzer bereshit shelo asanu kegoyei aratzot velo samanu kemishpechot adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'goraleinu v'chol hamonam va'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim Lifnei Melech Malchei HaMelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 oh, ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. The next section is Zichronot, remembrance, and we'll just take 30 seconds to try to remember whatever it is we want to remember. And I'll share one kavanah, just a memory about this from recently. My son goes to a Jewish day school here in Chicago, and they had sort of a hybrid model where sometimes they were in the building and sometimes they were on Zoom. And one nice thing, maybe the only nice thing about having it on Zoom is that I get to see some of what happens in my son's classroom. And they have mixed age classrooms every now and again where they get the kids from all over the school, 8th graders, 4th graders. My son is 5, he's a kindergartner. And they were all sharing things, just objects from their house to kind of get to know each other. And a 3rd grader, I think he was a 3rd grader, shared an object. I don't remember what the object was. But he said the reason why he was sharing it was because it reminded him of how the world used to be. And I at first found this amusing because it's like, well, as adults, 6 months is 6 months, and it's not so hard to remember how the world used to be. For this child, it was really like he really wanted to remember. It's been a big part of his life, percentage-wise. And I found that very moving as I was thinking about what I was going to say today and how I was going to approach this service and what I felt like I needed to remember. So I'll encourage us to take 30 seconds and reflect on remembrance, whatever that means to you. And the last special section before we get to the end in Kiddush is traditionally shofarot. And again, we don't blow the shofar today. But I want to highlight this prominent piece in the liturgy that concludes all of these sections. The statement, Hayom Harat Olam, today the world stands at birth. And I want to point out that this is in fact a mistranslation of an original verse in the prophets. And in the prophets, Hayom Harat Olam is a curse. Right? We translate Hayom Harat Olam as Olam, the world. Hayom Harat is the birthday of the world. Olam is the subject of that sentence. In Yirmiyahu, I believe it's Yirmiyahu, the subject of that sentence is a woman. And the line Hayom Harat Olam means she's going to be forever pregnant. Olam can also mean forever. She's going to be forever pregnant. And it's actually a curse, right? This idea that you're always waiting to arrive, but you're never going to arrive. It's actually one of the most fearsome biblical curses. This woman being forever, if there are women on the call, which I think there are, if you can imagine, being 9 months pregnant forever. It's actually a quite terrible thing. And one of the beautiful things that I think the Machzor does with it, and I think this happens in Jewish tradition throughout, is we take something that's really fearsome and recontextualize it so it's a little bit less so. So Hayom Harat Olam here, it's transformed from a curse into a recognition of the renewal of the world. And it's not a perfect renewal, right? That line says, be compassionate to us if as slaves or as children, if the world is good, or if the world is bad. It doesn't say the world is going to be perfect. It doesn't transform, doesn't completely expunge a curse. But it massages it a little bit and transforms it a little bit into something slightly kinder and something slightly softer. And I think if I could leave you with one thought for the Rosh Hashanah season, and maybe one Jewish thought in general, what all of this stuff is about, I think, is building kinder, gentler world, kinder and gentler Jews, and a kinder and gentler world. And we see that in the way the liturgy transforms earlier statements, and we see that in the transformative process of tshuva itself. Hayom Harat Olam, page 166. Today the world stands at birth. Today all creation is called to judgment, whether as your children or as your servants. If as your children, be compassionate with us as a parent is compassionate with children. If as your servants we look to you expectantly, waiting for you to be gracious with us as the day emerges from night, bring forth favorable judgment on our behalf, awe-inspiring and holy one. We'll continue on page 160. Page 170. Hayom, 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 I'm saying new, amen. Hayom, 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 Baruch atah Adonai, Oseh HaShalom. We just have three more things. We have Kaddish Shalem, and then we have Adon Olam, and then we have Mourner's Kaddish, Adon Olam, and Kiddush. So I'd ask that we unmute ourselves. I invite you to unmute yourselves for Kaddish Shalem. Right now on page 171. Yitgadal v'yikadash Amen. Alma divra kirute v'yamtich malchute v'chayechonu v'yomecho v'chayedecho beit Yisrael b'agala u'bizman karivim Mishnei Rabba v'vorach le'yom v'chubal v'chavaya Yitkarach v'yishnabach Arbi Troma, Baby Kadar, Vita Levi, Shmeidik, Shaprimu, Ela Leila, Mikobachata, Bishirata, Hemata, Damiran, Be'al, Mabim, Be'im, Kabel, Tzlot, Ubao, El Kodam Avon, Bishmaya, Be'im, Amen. Maraba Mishmaya, Rechaim, Hallelujah, Israel, Be'im, Amen.
Amen.
Oh, say Shalom in Roma. Oh, yeah, say Shalom. I'll call your straight we will continue now. We'll continue.
Rabbi, can you unmute yourself?
We'll continue with Aleinu on page 173. Aleinu l'shabech l'adon hakol. I'll take you. Kakatu b'tor tech Adonai imloch leolam v'ed v'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom ahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Mourner's Kaddish is on page 174. Once again, I'll invite everyone to unmute so we can respond to Yeheshmei Rabbah and to our minyan. Yitgadal, Yitgadash, Alma, Yidra, Yitei, V'yamlich, Beit Yisrael, Bagala, Ubizman Kari, Amen. Yitpa'ar, B'Shema, Olam, Vitalal, Vitale, Vitalal, Shmei, Vida, Brichu,
Brichu.
Le'ela, Minkol, Birchata, B'shirata, Le'ela, Minkol, Birchata, B'shirata, Yushbechata, V'nechemata, Gaviran, B'ra, Vimru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba, V'chinu V'alchol Yisrael, V'imru Amen.
Amen.
Yehi Shalom Lama, Shalom. Aleinu V'alchol Yisrael, V'alchol Yoshvei Tevel, V'imru
Amen.
Amakom Yinachem Hashem, B'toch Shar V'lo Zion, B'Yushalayim. May God comfort all who are mourning with those who mourn for Zion and Jerusalem. I meant to mention beforehand, I'll mention it now. As many of you, I'm sure, saw, we lost a great American Jew, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just before Rosh Hashanah. May her memory be a blessing. Next is Adon Olam. Okay, no. Next, because there's always announcements as usual. I'm gonna invite Becky Phillips of My Jewish Learning to make a few announcements about what's gonna happen for the rest of the day and what's going on in My Jewish Learning over the holidays. After that, we're gonna do Adon Olam and we're gonna make Kiddush together. So if you have a little grape juice and challah handy, now would be a good time to go get that as you listen to what Becky is going to tell us.
Thanks so much. Thank you to Rabbi Resnick on behalf of My Jewish Learning for such a beautiful and thoughtful service. Thank you so much to everybody who came. Definitely the first time that I have prayed on my Jewish on Rosh Hashanah with 380 people, so that was a real pleasure. We will be back here same time, 11 a.m. Eastern on Yom Kippur. I hope you will join us. It will be a different Zoom link, so please pay attention to your email to get that. And Rabbi Resnick will also lead us in Ne'ilah, the concluding service of Yom Kippur, on Monday evening. I think that's September 28th. My Jewish Learning is offering classes throughout the day today. Hopefully you got the link for those in your email. We start with a 1 p.m. Torah study this afternoon, and there are a couple other classes. You should have the schedule. I hope you will join. And tomorrow we are streaming live the shofar service at 11 a.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern. Since we could not do a shofar service today, you can see that on the My Jewish Learning Facebook page. You do not need to be a Facebook member to watch that. That is all. I will let Rabbi Resnick conclude with Adon Olam. And please unmute yourself to do so. Rabbi, can you unmute yourself? Sorry,
we're a little bit late, but you can't skip Adon Olam because you never skip Adon Olam. It's on page 175. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yetzir nivra li'ein asa b'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra azai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora v'hu haya v'hu v'hu yeh b'tifara v'hu yeh b'tifara v'hu echad v'ein sheni lehamshilo leachmira b'li reishit b'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra v'lo ha'oz v'hamisra v'hu eli v'chai go'ali v'tzur chevli b'eitzara v'hu nisi umanos li minat kosi b'yom ekra minat kosi b'yom ekra b'yado afkin ruchi b'hei shan b'ayira v'him ruchi giviyati Adonai li v'lo ira Adonai li v'lo ira. Kiddush is on page 29. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת. לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת, וינפש שבת, וינפש שבת, וינפש. על כן ברך אדוני יום השבת ויקדשהו, וידבר משה את מועדי אדוני אל בני ישראל. תיקחו בחודש שופר בחסד יום חגנו, כי חוק לישראל הוא משפט ללא יעקב סברי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. And if you have a little bit of bread, like I do, I had the Ziploc bag ready to go the whole time. We can make motzi. Joni, you want to help? No? Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. We'll wish you all, on behalf of me and my Jewish learning, a very sweet and healthy and restorative new year. Shana Tova. Maybe we can unmute everyone just for a minute, and everyone can say Shana Tova, and it'll sound
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
Shana Tova.
That's honey.
It's wonderful.
Shana Tova.
I don't know how to mute. I love that.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Love you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.